So I caught a tweet the other day from my boy, Alex Hermosi. It caught my eye. It inspired me a little bit. It said this. He said, "There's no greater waste of time than justifying your actions to people who have a life you don't want." And this got me thinking. I've said this frequently in the past on other podcasts. I write about this all the time. This idea that you should never take advice or feedback from people in the stands. If they aren't on the court, they do not matter. And I was inspired by that concept from Kobe Bryant, who said, "Boos don't block dunks." And I love that idea that people who aren't in the game do not matter. And to take this concept a little bit further from Alex, if you don't want the person's life that they are currently living, then why on earth would you ever take their advice? Whether that's fitness advice, that's money advice, whether that's business, relationship. And what's so fascinating for me, for the first 25 to 30 years of my life, I only had people in my life to take advice from who, when I take a step back and look at it objectively, I would never want their outcome. They were unhealthy maybe in some capacity. They maybe didn't have their money game figured out, or they were slaves to their W-2. And so the reason for this is because when you're young, you don't have a great network of people who are further along in life and like really crushing it on all cylinders. And where I was in my point in my journey, I only had people who were also on similar points of their journey, and there's nothing wrong with that. But recognize that if the only people that you have to take advice from are people who are at similar points on the journey as you, then you're going to get the same perspective. And because you don't want to change places with them, it's probably not a perspective worth taking. And this is, I think, one of the reasons so many people struggle with finances. You know, we grew up in family situations, households like mine, maybe where we didn't talk about money a lot. I think society puts this taboo on talking about net worth or income and expenses, all these things. And so while money is this incredibly important thing, we all feel really stupid and uncomfortable talking about it, whether that's with friends and loved ones or just strangers. And so we all have kind of like this hush-hush approach to that. And if you're like me, coming from like a middle socioeconomic state when I was growing up, the only other people that you had to take that advice from were people who were middle class. And so you didn't have access to the millionaires and like the upper class to be like, what are they doing with money? How do they think about it differently? Well, actually, we do have access to them, but we have it through different media forms, whether that's through books or podcasts, videos. We do have access to it, but it didn't register, at least in my brain when I was younger, that I had access to those people's way of thinking and viewing the world. I just wasn't tapping into it because I put more stock in the physical people in proximity to me in my life than I did to the ephemeral thoughts filtered from Elon Musk into a book or into a podcast, right? I put more stock into what my brother thought I should do with my money than what Warren Buffett was saying. And so Alex's tweet got me inspired and got me thinking about something, which is simply this. I encourage you to stop envying people for their nice watches, for their big houses, their fancy cars, their things that their money can buy them, these status symbols. And instead, what I think is truly worth envying is people's ability to coherently organize their thoughts, to eloquently structure their arguments, and succinctly deliver a message with impact. So for me, having original thoughts and the ability to effectively communicate that to the world, that is the ultimate flex. Now, this is kind of unrelated to the message that Alex had here, but I'm going to tie it together. So Alex's message was all about, not wasting time on the judgments of other people that you would not want to trade your place with. Now, the reason this inspired my response, which was don't envy people for their commodities, envy people for the truly priceless original things that only they have, their thoughts, their communication abilities, right? Don't envy commodities because those can just be purchased. The originality, that can't be bought. That can only be manifested. The reason I got thinking about that concept was because when I read Alex's post, I thought, damn, I wish I had said it that way. I really connected with his ability to organize his thought, to succinctly present it as an argument, to structure it, and then deliver it. And so he did all three things. He had the thought, he had the structure, he had the delivery in that one little tweet. And I thought that was amazing. So like the content of his tweet, fantastic. However, it was the originality. It was his ability to communicate it that really inspired me. And I thought, man, forget all of Alex's money, forget all of the businesses that he's built. The thing that I really admire about him is his originality, his ability to communicate. And so I wanted to share that with you guys, because I think those are the things that really help you become a high status individual. It's not the bling, it's not the things, it's not the fancy things that money can buy. It's the person that you become in the process of achieving those things. Like the type of person who's capable of achieving great success in life. It's not because they had the fancy car. It's not because they had the fancy watch. It's because they had the original thoughts. They had this deeper level approach to life in general. And so I just encourage us to think about that being the thing that we envy in people, and that being the thing that we try to emulate, and that we work hard in our journaling and our day-to-day process. So like when I'm doing a video like this, I'm working on becoming better at organizing my thoughts, succinctly structuring my argument, and then delivering that message with impact. And so I think if anything you take away from this today is be conscious about what it is that you envy in other people. I'm not saying envy is a good thing, but I'm just saying it's part of the human nature. And yes, we can try to eliminate it entirely, but also just accept that it's going to be there, right? It's going to be there. So let's try and point it in a helpful direction. And I was again reminded of this because I was reading a book by Mark Manson. Mark Manson's a fantastic writer. He wrote the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And I read it and I'm like, damn, this guy is such a good communicator. He's so eloquent with his thoughts. I wish I could write like this. And I'm sure a lot of people look at my writing and think the same thing, but those are the things I think that are truly worth envying. And maybe you disagree. Maybe what you actually envy is like somebody who's a fantastic parent, or really caring and loving and like just a great friend. Like those are totally worthy things. Like for me, not really I mean, I do envy those things, but they don't resonate with my soul in the same way. So I just want to share that. Like, let's be cognizant about what it is that we are envying in others, because that will ultimately define the outcome of our life. So, hope this brings you guys a little bit of value. Looking forward to seeing you back around these parts tomorrow. But until then, stay hyper-focused, my friend.